that, and it's nice to know that people are taking an interest in the work. Yeah, I did the work. Sorry.
Okay, so we call the meeting to order. 9:30. Try to turn on the recording. So we'll start out with a quick review of the agenda. We have public comments, public commissioner comments, a review of 3 months worth of minutes, and we have a forum for meeting to go through those. We'll have a presentation about the commission stuff, pilot updates by Captain Campcar and Tensa. Maybe we'll have some policies to go over that Sergeant Williams will go over with us again. Then evaluation of discipline employees, Becky from the City's Human Resource Department, and then employee health and wellness, Emily McCauley will come in and talk about that. She's from and then we'll have an introduction to the Code of Conduct by Sergeant Williams, and then we will have a further discussion at our next meeting. So, if anybody has any additions or changes to the agenda before we get started. And then if you have any public wants to make comments, if you could fill in a form, give it to a member here next to me. We'll go into public comments and turn over that.
Okay, so far I have one blue form, and that is from Mr. Tyndall. Mr. Tyndall.
Okay, the fifth time I have addressed this group regarding Bob's censorship rules. Since no one has made a motion to repeal this affront to the First Amendment, I must conclude that all of you have fascist aims. If you haven't figured it out, Trump is president because America is sick of self-righteous morons controlling free speech in the name of being nice. This hijacking of people's better nature has reached the point where simple disagreement with someone's narrative is labeled as hate speech. Now that regressives on the left have lost the election, they are doubling down as they try to reinforce a narrative that fails under examination, using false news, fear-mongering, and mass protest. Sadly, this is the logical extension of political correct, censorious behavior growing extreme over the past few decades. 4.5 years ago, when I arrived at this table, it was Tamara Miller, who worked to silence the token liberal. When she finally turned out, Bob took over as the thought police. The showdown with Bob came over the civil disturbance policy outlining EPD's response to protests, specifically escalating to violence. In the end, I voted for the policy, though it was badly worded, does not adequately protect First Amendment peaceful protest, and opens the door to abuse and possibly huge legal costs for the city. Unfortunately, I believe that Chief Kearns and the command staff will be reasonable. This policy should never be used to repeat the Thursday, May 11, 1972 events in Boston, when thousands of officers were bussed in for a day of violence against anti-war protesters. Bob's pro-police attitude was challenged by hearing about the injuries to innocent students, the property damage in MIT, and the coordination needed to organize this atrocity and the near-complete news blackout. Today on YouTube, you can watch protesters beating people unconscious and then continuing to club them as they lie on the ground. There is arson, vandalism, assaults, roadways being blocked, and the like. Where were the police in Berkeley and elsewhere while this was going on? This is not First Amendment free speech. These are acts of terror. If this insanity comes to Eugene, shoot the bastards. This violence, exactly like Bob's demand for a public apology for relating my experience with police misbehavior in 1972 in the hope to avoid it here in Eugene, should not be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
Eugene.
So now we'll go around for commissioner comments. Before we do that, though, Carter asked me to pass out here is our latest Trees Commission brochure. It has contact information on the back, so if everybody would take a look at that and make sure that everything is correct. So it's not public. And then we'll go to comments. Let's just sort of go around and start with Mr. Blakey. Oh, we might have to open up public comment. So we'll hold down on commission comments. Just go ahead and sit down there, please.
Good evening. I won't hear my usual lovely tones because I'm a bit sick, but I want to speak to the Commission on a policy question that has recently come to public attention, which I would characterize as a question of haste or patience in practical situations in which there's been some controversy and difference of opinion expressed inside the department, apparently, in which just on my own behalf, on behalf of those people that I feel I can speak for in the public, which obviously is not the whole public, but I'm very pleased to see the Eugene Police Department seems to be moving in the direction of patience and forbearance in situations that are complex, dangerous, and difficult, taking a path which can result in less drama, less overall danger, and good outcomes for everyone involved. And what happened in my neighborhood, I won't go into details, but there's a sign, I think, that there are good things happening, and I hope the Commission, in whatever way it can, will do what it can to encourage that direction on the part of our police department. Thank you very much.
So we'll go into Commissioner comments and start us out.
I apologize last month for not being able to make it. I was out of town on business. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this year and working with everybody and getting some policies reviewed and some work done. And Happy New Year.
And I'll apologize also for being out of town and working with this. Hopefully I won't have any more conflicts with this year. And the civilian review board meeting, I believe, I think.
Yes, the two things that are on my mind are, one, I attended the Downtown Public Safety Committee work session at City Council Wednesday, and it's a very good explanation of the plan. From the perspective of the overall picture, we also got director of planning, I believe it was, that gave us a bigger picture of what they plan to do. But I really wish Mike Clark were here tonight, because his comments were very, very telling and important. I mean, the fact that we have the situation here where people are in fear for their safety in the downtown area, and we don't seem to be directly taking that on. We seem to be working around the edges and not really getting to it. And that's been a big concern. You all have heard me before on this issue, and I know that it means everything to everyone, that they all feel safe downtown, downtown. And the other thing is, I'd like to end up with a compliment to the police department for their swift apprehension of the people that were committing all the robberies this past week. I believe it was 14 hours, which may, as I told you, might be some kind of new record for you to see that many crimes cleared that quickly. It's just astounding, and just all credit goes to the officers who worked hard on finding out who these people were arresting. So thank you for making it safer.
As my compliments regarding the commercial burglary, our business was an attempt. They didn't get in, but given what I read in the paper, it's probably the same guy, and nothing's happened since. So I do appreciate that. It was also, given that there was very little damage and no entry, I was very pleased with the speed of the response as well. Regarding the downtown problem, I saw that the chief dared to admit that it was not entirely an enforcement problem, which I think is fairly obvious. I mean, if the solutions were simple, then we probably would have found it already. I think part of what we need to recognize it is a multitasking problem, and that it's going to take contributions from different sectors. I also agree that greater enforcement is needed against certain individuals, and maybe we can have some outreach from the police on that in the future. You know, undoubtedly, the people who are doing the street level harassment aren't doing it when there's a police officer present. So I don't know if there's some advice we can give about recording things or pictures or what, but it is a small enough town and there's a limited number of people downtown. A guy bugged me and he was wearing a beanie. It's probably not going to find him, but you know, he bugged me. I walked away. I turned around and took a picture, and then I sent it in. That gives us a little something more to go on, and then we're identifying people who really are a problem as opposed to lumping everybody who's downtown sitting around on the sidewalk in the same thing. So at least that's kind of the way I see what we might be able to do more on this problem. Because I don't really think the answer is going to be to flood downtown with more officers. It's too expensive and it suppresses the problem without resolving the source. Thanks. Sorry.
I have an apology too for making that. Nothing as good as being out of town business. I just couldn't get on the driveway. It was still ice here. I was gratified to see the city council at least picking up the downtown issue. I would really like to have some insightful, wise thing to say by way of a solution, but I've done my best. It's such a gnarled problem. It's a Gordian knot. I wish we had the right sword, but I'm just glad to see that they're at least talking about it.
I have a few things. Apologize if I go on. I want to thank the public for coming to comments. I think they're always important. And Jeff, your comments are well taken. We've talked a lot about the police department have more of a guardian type of role in the community and not a warrior out to just do that. And so I think that goes along with trying to de-escalate and work through problems instead of just going after them with force. So appreciate your comments on that. I went and visited the 911 center Saturday night and spent about 3 hours there, and that is a fascinating operation that they have there, and it was really good for me to sit in there and watch how it works and all the things they do between suspension fire and police and keeping track of them, answering the calls, whether it's emergency or non-emergency. And it's a smaller group than I would have thought. They work really well together. And as I get older, I can barely hear as it goes, and they were listening to each other's conversations, and they heard somebody answer a 911 call, and it was a police call. The dispatcher was already paying attention. We need to save cars for that call. It was really impressive while they all worked together and did that. Hats off to them. They did a great job. And I recommend anybody to go and do that, to go and visit them for a couple hours. It's a great thing. And the other one I want to talk about is we had one of our community members approach me, and they wanted to talk about they had jury duty back in January, and they were so impressed with our police department and the handling of the case that I brought some notes to talk about. It was an assault case involving the homeless community, and the officers that handled it were wearing body cameras, and so the jury was allowed to be able to really see after they heard the testimony of what really happened. And she said that one of the great things was that all the officers were extremely kind, compassionate, and fair with dealing with both the victim and the suspect in this. And the surrounding group, she said there was quite a group, and a lot of them started to get vocal. You could hear them and see them on the body cams, and the officers were always professional. They were always talking nice and just trying to get everybody to separate and calm the situation down. As she said, the footage on those body cams really helped the jurors see the testimony as it was captured. The footage proved very valuable when the witnesses were called to stand to help clear up who said what. I was very grateful for the footage because it helped me in the decision process, she said. And her last comment to me was she thought the officers were awesome. So that's what we're to bring up here. We do. We have a great police department with a lot of great officers. It's good to see when the body cameras show the way they work. So, thank you. Solid.
We have a packed agenda, so let's get on it. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you.
So we'll move on to the minutes. Does anybody have any comments, questions on the months, 3 months of minutes?
Move that we approve this.
Okay. Is that all 3 months done?
Yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. We have moving into professional stops pilot update. Lieutenant Simpson, Lieutenant Simpson, join us. Thank you, Lieutenant, for joining us.
I'm Ron Tinsett, Lancaster, and I've been working on the SOPS data project for roughly the last year. I took over from some other people, including Captain Kemper. Over this last year, we've made some headway in some trial projects. As you may or may not remember, we've developed an iPhone app internally to give us a group of 12 officers the ability to record the demographic data that we're looking for. We ran that project from December through May with the 12 officers, and we're at about 94% participation, which is almost 100%, and this is with people who actually volunteered to do it. So that gave us a good look at one possible way of doing this. We've had a work order in with SunGuard for quite some time, and also had, at the end of the 6-month project, had the opportunity to look at a demo of their module. SunGuard is our records management system that we use here at the police department, and about a third of the people who participated in this first pilot program were able to look at this module and take comments on it, make sure that our scope of work was consistent or was applied to the product they delivered. We've also had some personnel changes that have set things back a little bit, and we are expecting the racial profiling module to come online with the next update, which is in the debugging phase now. So it should be coming fairly soon, at which point we'll decide whether we can run another 6 months with a select group of officers again in the 12 or so, or whether it's something that we'll do department-wide. We'll have to make that determination based on our technology issues. So that's what we have coming for 2017, and then we'll bring this back to senior staff for review of the entire project. I expect that to happen late this year. Is there any questions about it? I know it's been going for some time.
The iPhone module, the data from that is being collected basically the same spreadsheet headings as what you're going to get from SunGuard, or is the data to be comparable to those systems? Excellent, great. Yeah, congratulations. That's
very, very close.
Good. Thank you.
Will you be sharing some of the results with us?
Or I'll defer to you on that.
The first 6 months included testing from 12 officers. What we've what we found out has more to do with back-end systems and user issues than we would ever feel comfortable making conclusions based on 12 officers. So there have been records requests, and the information has been released. The information has been released to students who are studying it, and we're waiting to get a bigger sample of people. What we really wanted to do was check and see if the iPhone app was a good tool, and if then now moving on to SunGuard, if there are any operational issues with that, so that when we roll it out, we've got the back-end issues resolved, user issues resolved. But yes, we would share when we have meaningful data about the usage in the department. We can absolutely share that.
And kind of just to follow up, what we'll end up doing is once this goes live, this full contract with the PSU, and we'll have some analytical work done, and that will also be released. And at least that's the plan.
When we put this whole rollout together, of course, we're way behind because it took SunGuard a long time to make it available. We knew that for the first year, we wouldn't be generating data that would provide any analytical value. The whole purpose of the first year is just to exercise the process for the users, for the software, for the data collection, for the analysis. But we know that out of 12 users, it's not going to be telling. And then in the following year, when we go live with everybody, then we'll have something that will tell us what our trends are.
More for what your question is. So, are you finding that is it easy for the officers that you've tested with to put this information in? I know we're sort of asking for limited information at this point, but is it easy to convenient? Is it easy for them to do this after every call?
The iPhone app, I sometimes forget because they'll be in the middle of something and some emergency will happen, so they'll have to stop doing this and then go to whatever else, and it may be a high-stress situation or it may be a productive situation, but they find that 3 hours later they have a hard time remembering, number one, you go back and do it because there's not an automatic reminder, and then some of the details pretty close, sometimes you might have to go back on ICD and review some of those things, but with the SunGuard module, it will actually pop up a somewhat self-populated screen that won't go away until you do some data entry. And so that's why we believe that the SunGuard module will be the way to get that 100% compliance rate. Participation rate, whatever you like to call it.
And I guess that's what the part I always worried about is just having that, making sure that that gets sort of done. And as you work on your stage where you're going from effectively that if you don't forget and remember to put that in, and then people know that you or you just didn't want to do it, or you're trying to secure the number.
Right, and that's why having that screen kind of, it happens in the back, but it doesn't go away until you do something. So that's one of the big advantages of the SunGuard product. And again, this will be a 6-month look at the product, working on the process before we can make any final decisions.
Anything else?
I just want to say thank you to you folks that are working on this. It really means a lot to the public.
Great, thank you. So before we move on to our next section, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. Chris Sankey just joined us, and he wanted to announce that he was promoted recently to detective, and
I didn't realize I wanted to do that.
So he's now working at Private Crimes,
Yeah.
detective in Private Crimes and patrol. Mark at this point. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I was late with the kids' first meeting. Will be my days from now on. Yeah. Thanks.
Questions? Come talk about your policies.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. So we're going to just make this section super brief. Rendering medical aid, there are a couple of super minor little changes that have been updated since the last meeting we have. Those include a short line under the employee responsibility when confronted with, and we've changed that to when they encounter. Just soften it up a little bit. And then it was brought to my attention that we no longer do CPR, we do CCR. So we've made that change to make sure that we're on time. At that point, this policy is complete, and I've got it queued up actually for the chief to sign and be pushed out to the department members on Friday. So that's 343. Any questions about that?
I noticed it's called a procedure, not a policy.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
So we have made a switch earlier this year to the police operations manual being the whole, and then separating it into policies and procedures. The procedures being things that are required by accreditation, things that are legally required or have a significant legal component, things that are of significant public interest, and anything else we want to make a policy if it makes sense to be that way. Procedures are all the things that are purely procedural. This is how you check out your car. This is how you grade your car. This is how you made all of those things that just don't need to be. There's kind of a long-term goal of that to hopefully push the review process down a level for procedures because they don't have the sensitive nature to try to make the review process easier so that we can hopefully someday be up on our reviews on every document that we have in our operations manual while maintaining the policies at that high level of approval level. So that's kind of the goal. Yeah. And I believe that this rendering emergency medical aid, other than those two changes, is the same as it was last month, although it was the same people. We're the same people. So any other thoughts or questions on that one? Okay. And then 702 had just a handful of suggested changes. Those are highlighted, or the changes that were made are highlighted. And 702 and 703 did not have any recommended changes from that last meeting where we talked about it. And most of those policies were published and pushed out to the department a couple of weeks ago.
Any questions on the policy?
If there weren't any updated suggestions, I'm happy to make some notes and then plug them into the next review unless they're critical.
I don't have any questions or comments. Entertain a motion to accept the policy. So moved. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We had a full agenda tonight, so I didn't put any breaks in, so if you need to do anything, please feel free to do it. The break to be clear whenever you need to go. And we'll move into evaluation and discipline of employees. Oh, that's what
Heading back in the center Mesa, would you just give a brief description of the work that you do and what your history is so that everybody understands what your perspective is?
My name is Becky. Hello, everyone. in the human resources manager and central human resources. And my team is tasked with supporting UCD and all of their human resources needs, so we work very closely on all of those factors, hiring and promotion. And there was a secret between HR for 22 years as well. And just really see my role as supporting UCD, sort of their strategic objectives and partnering with them. Congratulations. Currently, I'm a special standards lieutenant. I oversee policy, internal affairs, investigations, as well as training and duty assignments. And as you know, I've been here for 21 years. From the bottom up, and I've been in this assignment for the last year. And previously, I was my so I deal with all things IA and policy. And I have her on speed that. We work pretty closely together in the IA process world and some training issues too. So, I think one of your interests is hearing how promotion processes happen in the city in general, and certainly specific to UCD. And so, whenever we have a vacancy within the city, we typically post it internal versus external. External posting happen with most promotional processes are not the city. However, in public safety and specifically police and fire, there's really unique operational needs and operational knowledge and skills that your employees develop as they're in entry-level positions, officer and firefighter. So the majority of promotional processes do happen internally for those positions just because of the fact that there's a unique level of knowledge and skill that's gained being internal to our department. So for ED specifically, the charge is lieutenant rank. The majority, if not all of the time since I've been here, we've done internal only promotional processes for sergeants and lieutenants for all of the reasons that we specified. Typically what the process looks like is the management team, the chief and his management team, and all of the ranks that will be involved in the promotional processes take a really close look at the dimensions and attributes and the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are really needed for somebody to be successful in those roles. Everything within the process is based around gathering and evaluating that information. And processes themselves are not just an interview process typically they include additional process components such as maybe an in-law exercise, a role play exercise, a risk exercise, and again, those are additional ways to gather some real specific information about a candidate's capability for promotion. Following that, the promotion finalists typically candidates move on to a promotional background review process. And again, whenever we hear and see information within an investment that are best practices to make sure that we're verifying that information is truly accurate and within the candidate's day-to-day work that they are demonstrating those attributes, suitability attributes already. And once that's established through the promotional background review process and an offer is made and candidates move forward. Sergeant lieutenant processes especially are fairly competitive. We have a lot of really great officers with a lot of really great skills, and those do become competitive processes. And so, questions about that?
Public executives, do you do anything different to be promoted to detective?
We go based on specified.
All night long.
I would say that those processes are similar with a real specific focus for in those program areas.
So is that all right to ask questions in regards to each section?
Maybe best, if that would be easier to just say
I think that would be easier since we're going to have very different.
All right, so I read like 7-7 and 8-3, I guess, is where you're kind of. And I was wondering how they were selected for promotion and so on. We can go with what's required for the position and assess, somehow assess your talent within.
Correct. So a job posting, the job posting goes out to all of the candidates that are interested in promotion to apply to that and assess whether or not they meet the minimum qualification. And the candidates going for sergeant and lieutenant are small enough that individuals that meet the minimum qualifications are invited forward to the assessment center.
And is there a uniform or standardized process for promotions to sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, or is it more ad hoc? And is there something like a framework?
So the general framework in terms of steps that are included, however, specific things such as interview questions, and the specific types of exercises that are part of each process are unique to that process for two reasons. One reason, we always are working on improving the processes from time to time, and also the second primary reason is we don't want to have the same interview questions, for example, from one process to another, because that would give an advantage to candidates who already have the process. So we try to make each process so unique. However, the dimensions themselves are very similar to how this process, so the attributes that we're looking for, the skills that we're looking for are similar.
So there's consistency in the approach.
There's still some consistency as a very similar to the primary.
How are emotions factored into your promotion? Like someone who's demoted, how's that factored in?
I would say in general, whenever someone moves towards a performance background review, what is looked at within that would be internal affairs history from previous performance evaluations and personnel files, as well as internal interviews related to the attributes.
When I was looking at 8.3, I had a section, one of the sections in there, in regards to emotion was really going to pay. It's the same thing in there about eligibility or more information in this order. Guidelines, guidance around this issue, especially where the emotion is voluntary. I know in another section you have a confident emotion. This is how that factor in. Where there's an involuntary demotion, is there some guidance around how that factors in? Can they just, if there's a posting, regardless of whether they can demote it, if they testify, they can move on.
Individuals can apply for any position. However, again, information that is somebody's personnel file is followed by a history would be part of the performance background consideration, and that would include anything ranging of the entire disciplinary range, and things such as the severity of the discipline, as well as the other factors around candidate's ability to move forward or taking into consideration on the case.
That answers the question about someone gets promoted. If we have a posting, they are eligible to apply if they
and then it just becomes somebody's decision, regardless of what gets
Yes, there are some postings that we will include. For example, I believe our current police captain posting that as we do have language that says that there might be something that we need to qualify consideration. But in general, the city has a philosophy of allowing everybody to apply for a position and have disciplinary history because information is considered as the appropriate time in the process.
I put myself in the queue. And not to get too much in the weeds here, but when you look at the performance or the background, I mean, at that point, is it so competitive where you're comparing people's backgrounds, or at that point, is it just do you qualify for the position at this point because it's going to be offered to them? I guess I'm trying to understand that piece. Does that make sense? Right?
You are, yes.
Okay.
I think the answer is it depends on the specific process. Historically, he is typically at the ranking list doing functional processes, and the performance background needs to meet a threshold of suitability at the discretion of the chief executive or whoever is designated to make that decision. And again, at that point in time, historically, people have been promoted within the order of which they tested. But anyway, there's some variances that do allow for assessment of the strength of the flexibility of the performance.
Is that similar to a new recruit's background, where you look at and evaluate a new recruit's background if it would be acceptable to offer them a job? And I'm just trying to kind of understand that, how much that plays. So I think that's a little bit more Steve is going to some of these questions, is like some of their history of the department, how much that plays in to be promoted or not. Is there, if they have things in their file.
Certainly, for entry-level background, all candidates are held to, in my experience, and what I've observed, the decisions that EPD has made, they're held to a certain high standard of suitability, things like have disciplinary history of information that is gathered and considered as part of that background. And so there is, I would say, a very high standard both for promotions as well as entry-level background.
Are we going to talk about demotion later, or discipline, or are we?
We're going to cover discipline.
Okay. I'll take that question.
They have lateral transfers. I know they're available for hires in the department, but are they also the possibility of a lieutenant or sergeant here as a lieutenant?
That hasn't been historically.
Lateral transfers. Okay. And the next question is, what length of time in previous position would you have to have? The way you're going, was you have to get 5 years.
Off the top of my head, I believe it is 5 years for sergeant, and I want to say 7, or I guess 3 years of supervisory experience. Or a lieutenant, which is a different stage.
Anyone else with any questions?
The general APM city policy covers evaluations that have been as part of your packet that includes general guidelines. How those guidelines are applied are individual to each department and the nature of the work and specific nature of the work in each department often drives the type of specifics that are included within that evaluation. There are general guidelines. Human resources gathers that information and ensures that the information is in the personnel file. However, we don't have an oversight of that.
So, you said that they're done at the individual kind of lowest leverage names to the evaluation.
There's a city-wide policy, but how that policy is applied is typically individual to the department in terms of what information they want included in the evaluation.
Are the evaluations tied to the job description?
Yes, they're tied to, it depends on, again, the department, they're tied to the work that the individual do, so yes, the job description.
So in regards to the DPD, there are job descriptions for every position?
Yes, there are job descriptions for positions, but they're down on our external website.
And evaluations, I guess, take the job description into consideration.
Yes, the job duties into consideration.
Do we track, like, whether they're done timely, or something like supervisors? Do we track that? Do we have a way of ensuring that those are done?
I think what Maggie was implying, or what she was saying, is that the city has the standard APM for each department, and then it's up to each department to determine what each individual position is going to be evaluated on. And what you're asking is whether or not the department has tracked. I would say, maybe I would defer to the chief on this one, but generally it's up to each division within the department to indicate when evaluations are due and what formats they're going to take. We don't have a standardized city evaluation form that goes out to every division or department in the city. So it's up to EPD to decide what evaluation format we're going to use for each division. and then those division managers to set those standards for what their expectations are.
I guess I'm just trying to understand what that's been done, and then what we, from a management perspective, try to ensure that you're getting reduced time and
We want to answer that question for you.
Sure. Well, I'll see what I can do, and you can fill in what I leave out. This is probably one of the areas where we're not in a place where we want to be. We're extremely consistent with our daily observation reports with recruits and with our evaluations of people who are employees who are on probation. We're a little less consistent with first-line employees and a little less consistent with first-line supervisors. As Lieutenant Mason was saying, it's really at the discretion of division managers the degree to which these are completed. And it's been a long time since we've looked at our evaluation process. So our intent is that as we go through our strategic plan, developing a meaningful evaluation for everybody in the organization will be one of the outcomes we achieve.
I didn't see anything in 7.7 regarding training and folks newly promoted. I'm wondering, are there programs in place to help cover the functions of everybody? Peer loss, that's a whole different experience for people. So I'm curious about what kind of programs we have in place that would be successful with next level.
We provide youth supervisor orientation to all supervisors within the city, and persons are doing commercial persons or sort of groups that are invited to that. And typically that's a 2-day overall citywide orientation of city policies, supervisors themselves before, but absolutely it does have some internal training component. So I can't speak to what's happening on patrol now because we're not, but when I was there a year ago, I was part of, 3 years ago, I was part of a team that developed specifically a sergeant field training manual / training program. So our newly promoted sergeants were kind of similarly treated to as a new officer where we would pair them up with a senior or tenured sergeant for a period of time, provide them with a list of things that they should be mentored and coached on and going over to learn instead of throwing this in the rules over and scheduling. And then at the point of the 4-week period, they were assuming they were signed off on everything that they were after the summer. I'm not sure if that program is still in effect and control over time. But we do have one of the things that I have committed to doing this year on my goal list for 2017 as a training manager is to try to re-implement a program that I went through when I was promoted to sergeant, which was the 40-hour sergeant academy. Was very attached for that week, and we have everybody from the city as well as our internal staff and provide that training for these periods of time, give them a really intense level. That's my goal this year, but also they're required new sergeants and lieutenants as well are required within the first year to attend 40 hours of supervisory level training that meets PPST's requirements for to obtain their supervisory training. And that training is provided by PPST, but can get certified outside training.
So just I personally think that training and assisting and helping somebody be successful to the level would be really important in having a process of that. I think that's for each level because you don't automatically know what
I put myself in queue as the next. And I was going to ask some questions, but I think the chief commented on the process that's going in. I'll change it to more of a comment, but I think the department should work towards really doing some regular evaluations, especially of supervisors, and put that in place. I think that's another one of our steps to show the public that we are, as a police department, saying we are looking at our supervisors for making sure that they're well trained and that their job they're doing is well as how we want them from the department standpoint. So I know that's a process. I know it's busy and understaffed in a lot of ways, but I think it's important to look at to do that, and then maybe as you get to that process, even looking at like a 360, and some of the lieutenants and captains, to make sure that you're looking at them, talking to enough people to get a really good evaluation of those things. Scott?
Just reading the evaluations, it sounds like the first one's 6 months, and then thereafter it's 12 months, and then every 12 months thereafter.
That's the recommended in the policy, correct?
In a employee's file, are there places for recognition and counseling or interim performance?
Certainly, I think it would be fair to say that there's an ongoing expectation as supervisors actively manage their employees to the time they receive an evaluation, there's no
Right.
evaluation. And so there is a lot of ongoing coaching, performance management that really are, I believe, supervisors consider deeply and that's an expectation. I would say statewide, we have supervisors that are stronger at being able to do that, and it's a little bit harder to making sure that we're doing the right performance evaluation. So I think there's some evaluation.
12 months, it seems like a long time, and if there's not guidance there, it can be done very subjective, to each person's.
So to add a little bit more to that, supervisors typically include all the supervisory files that include everything from what's positive to good, what's received, notes on things that their employees done well, as well as areas of coaching. Certainly, addressing disciplinary key factors in the personal file as well. And we do highly recommend a 360 type of an evaluation process where an employee has an opportunity to share what they believe their accomplishments and goals are. There's feedback that is received by the supervisor related to performance, but there is in our new supervisor orientation when we talk about performance management, we do set an ongoing expectation for ongoing performance management, not just at the written evaluation stage.
360, is that, how often is that done, and is that through a vendor?
It's not particularly through a vendor. It can be done informally via email. I have had some supervisors using SurveyMonkey as the internally only to do that as well.
Marshall,
So I gather that these are not evaluations that are scored and then used in the promotion process. They just sort of scan it as a number.
Correct.
Okay. Comments from the military. The Air Force. We found that we had.
Don't average.
Well, no, it's actually a good thing. What we found was everybody was wonderful, according to the employee. And then we also found that they really weren't so wonderful in terms of leadership qualities because we weren't taking down any subordinate input. Nobody's saying you're going to be great entirely by your subordinates, but we look at them carefully and find that series of people who separate from the service after being supervised by this person because they found it such a miserable experience. I do tend to favor more narrative ones. I tend to favor reports that say, these are the things you did well, these are the things I think you can improve on, and then some overall assessment. But sometimes the overall assessment is just you're meeting standards, you're not meeting standards. But it kind of avoids the inflation issue. If you do a score, if you end up with a scored one, we found you had to fall down to sleep and norm it at a certain level so that if everybody was top block, everybody's really that's just honest, painful.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the Employees Association contract. And there was some translation. Is that still right? Is that right? I heard. It's the last one. It's the last meeting we had on it.
Very hard to last.
Well, there is no more, right? Okay, that's all.
Any other questions?
I can chime in a little bit on the evaluation side, just from an officer's perspective.
There's times when we do get evaluations, there's times when we don't get an annual, and it is an annual one. And I think it's important for people to know that the department, in my opinion, does a good job of making sure the evaluations are completed on people that seem to be in need of an evaluation. I've had times where I didn't get an evaluation because there was more focus on folks that had incoming issues with citizens, complaints and things like that. So it's my opinion that the department does a good job of documenting very thoroughly and focusing on the people making improvements in those annual evaluations.
I just want to add one comment on that note that last year, 2015, we lately implemented a software program called MakeNote. I think it's part of the Office Suite, similar to Microsoft something. But it's a firm-wide used electronic system in which we can document performance, accommodations, or issues that need to be addressed. And really, I think we're saving notes in there for 2 years now, so that they're an electronic file that goes with the employee to the new supervisor. So when one person transfers to the next, their file doesn't disappear. We're encouraging more use of it, which I think is being embraced by the clients.
So, a couple of comments. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you for what you just said. Have worked in local government since 1971, and one of the things that has driven me crazy both as a citizen and as a public employee is the lack of continuity. When someone, especially a supervisor, transfers, retires, in the old days, people would just throw everything in the file cabinet out to make room for their work, so that records are actually being passed on and we don't continually lose that knowledge. My hat is off to you because that's much better for the public. Thank you.
Okay. So the objective is to have a consistent evaluation system that goes throughout the entire organization, that's central, the department, that's centrally stored, the other one that's digital. The nice thing about MakeNote is that it was produced by IA Pro. Are you familiar with IA Pro? Not. And IA Pro is the database that we invested in together with the auditor's office in 2007. It's where all the complaints that come into the department are stored. Auditor has access to them, we have access to them. And then that's expanded to a way to manage pursuits, damaged property, use of force. And then a few years ago, they invented this new way of documenting performance of employees. Entering into this system, it requires conversations with the employees so that when the information is entered into the system, the employee is notified, essentially saying, remember, we had this conversation. And it's a nice piece of software, but the range of use is across the board because some supervisors have time, some don't. Some are better at using it, some aren't. And we want to have good training for our first-line supervisors, and all of this requires time. And one thing that is made really clear to us is that we're massively understaffed in our department for the demands that our community has of us. And that just doesn't affect the time that it takes for us to respond to calls. I mean, we've gone to burglaries that occurred days before we got there to take the report. Sometimes many hours go by, but before a police officer shows up on a call. Well, the same is true with our supervisory staff. We don't have enough sergeants to supervise all the employees we have. We don't have a training team. What we have is one sergeant and one officer to coordinate ad hoc training throughout the entire department. And so that ad hoc training is it's developed by officers that are showing up late for calls for service or by sergeants that don't have enough time to do their fundamental duties, their fundamental responsibilities of supervising our response to emergency calls and so on. The 2007 study, staffing study that was produced, required or recommended that we have 25 more patrol officers
than we did at the time. We don't have any more patrol officers today than we did then, but our calls for service have gone up. And also recommended more supervisors. We have the same number. We have a few more supervisors now than we did then. But we're not coming anywhere near having the capacity to do the work that we want to do in order to provide the quality of supervisory oversight. But we're committed to doing it with what we have, and doing it ad hoc is not the ideal. It's pretty impressive what our officers are starting to pull off anyway.
Okay, I think that leads to the last topic of discipline, and referring to policy 1020, part of our personal complaint procedure. And on page 14, it talks about how discipline happens. And so let's start living in my position now, and kind of my guys get in trouble, so I don't have to do it. Discipline is pretty much left to the supervisor being involved in the way who receives a sustained allegation. So I'm going to assume that you all know how to get to sustained allegations through the course of an investigation complaint. So once that's sustained, then my team, City Coleman, or Rick River, usually one of the two of them will send the sustained allegation packet back down to the individual supervisor, at which point they go through steps 1 through 5, which we talked about the police personnel file with the make note of Shepard. They review that for similar work history or issues. They check our discipline records through IA, which is Shane's job. And then they call Becky or her team head of HR to look for what we call comparables and similar behaviors. So having done this in the past, I call and say, if they have the courtesy, sustained courtesy, I don't ask for food, but what are the similar disciplines for somebody who has sustained a courtesy violation? And then she would come back with a range of discipline that could be meted out, or that has been meted out for that same similar circumstance. And I feel like you kind of talk about how you come up with that. Sure. We have a database that we track our ones and we find, and so as the provider and during the organization, we enter that database, and I personal database, so the two pieces of information that we ensure that we get back to the supervisor and the discipline level for the employee of what that particular employee's discipline history is. Because sometimes they're making something that's a progressive, for example, and then also look at that we're comparable in terms of similar circumstances. So we're able to search that database for similar circumstances to provide there's certain things such as driving, infractions, etc. That would be more specific to you that we can search as well, and then we will send specific information back to the supervisor in generalities, not getting fully named, but in generalities, and finding around similar So as you can see, that the recommendations are based on citywide discipline and not necessarily specific to our department. Sometimes there's only things that we can do, so therefore there's regarding maybe fire might be involved in that too. So once that the information is given back to the supervisor, then they kind of have to weigh any mitigating or aggravating factors and the nature of whether it's a progressive discipline or not, to come up with where they believe the individual discipline needs to land based in that matrix. I don't want to use the word matrix, but in that range. And at that point, they typically consult with their supervisor, which is the next person to receive the file, about the appropriateness of that. Once they're on that page, then they go ahead and they fill out a memo of the proposed discipline, and they forward it back to the chain of command to get each level determination as to whether they think it's appropriate. Anywhere along that chain, the next level or the next supervisor can make a different recommendation. So if they think that it's too severe, they could write a memo indicating mitigating circumstances why it should be lower. And then it would go up, and eventually it ends up on the chief's desk. And he
is the final layer of facts and makes a determination as to what level of discipline based on what he's recommended would be. And of course, he can also lower or raise the discipline based on his review of the facts. So with that, once that has been approved by the chief, then it's given back to that supervisor to administer the discipline. Unless, of course, it involves due process, which is a loss of property right or money, at which point the division manager is the one that administers the discipline. Any questions?
I'll let Marcia go first.
So we were talking about the police in particular.
Right.
I understand that the collective bargaining agreement with the officers, but for binding arbitration, correct, for significant discipline.
Yes.
At what rank are they no longer eligible for that? Sergeant, lieutenant,
Well, they all have due process rights.
right, that's the sort of notice and comment procedure you're talking about, but where is the binding arbitration, which you may know?
The sergeant and lieutenant ranks they're not represented employees, they're not covered by the EPA contract. So the Indian, the Ministry of Health and Health, which is a few extras here, that discipline language follows, and as well as there were a disagreement with the discipline rather than agreement that the Indian contract. There's a complaint process that provides for similar types of steps. But fully arbitration is one of the remedies in that case.
I'm very familiar with it if you'd like me to respond to this. Go ahead. In the equipment field, when you read through the EPA contract, what you'll find is that there's a number of levels of grievance. The first is with the immediate supervisor, that can be informal, and then there's a written grievance that can go to the lieutenant, another one to the division manager, and then to the chief. And if the grievance isn't resolved with the chief, then normally the union would move to go to binding arbitration. And then, if you're familiar with the process, you can already show up like a pseudo trial.
Sure. I guess my concern, and obviously there's a comment, is that now that we're going to consider prior discipline or promoting people, which is entirely appropriate, but when we've demoted people previously and they choose to stay in the department and want to be re-promoted, we're now providing them with a lower level of due process. So they know they have bad marks in their record, and now if they were an officer, a line officer, they would have had a chance to challenge it in a more impartial forum. So it seems to be, in a way, punishing loyalty. So I would just ask, think about that in the future. It just doesn't kind of complement an organization when somebody is disciplined and chooses to be faith with an organization. So I just want to make sure we're right for those things.
Steve, Edward, and myself.
You said 10, 20.
No, it's probably changed. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just, I don't recall seeing anything with 10, 20,
You may have changed the policy number, it's the personal complaint procedure.
well, that is a package, I don't remember. No. I just saw it and see. Oh, I was gonna make sure I didn't something like that.
Yeah, we just read over everything, so I thought if we had these policy numbers today.
So I was curious on a couple things in section 12 to speak to temporary or permanent motion. Is that applicable to EPD or is that the city? Yeah, we have entitled, well, it says this disciplinary process. There are members of and within there it speaks to the motion to temporary and permanent. I was just wondering if the part of that thing transfers to EPD, which I think that's exclusive to the
I believe that language is in there, but I haven't seen that language exercise in my case.
You opened the door for me there. I mentioned about the disciplinary matrix. You said matrix, not the matrix is a common range. But I wonder if folks have seriously considered the matrix. I understand that you talked about for a number of years and some support of unions to have that discussion. So I'd be curious if we had any thoughts on it. Or things like that. Adding some uniformity and transparency next to your big things.
Well, we have had multiple conversations and multiple venues, and she has it perfectly.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Right now, I'm not inclined to go to a matrix, and frankly, I don't know how valuable it would be because there are so few things that would fit neatly into just one category. There are some things that would work really well. Discourtesy would work well, pursuits. But so many things are wrapped up into a whole series of circumstances and events that have a variety of allegations that may be confirmed by the time the event is done. When our internal affairs program manager, Cindy Coleman, did an evaluation of all this, I was looking for some consistency in how discipline was administered over the last few years. And what you find is that there's very little consistency because the facts vary substantially from one to the other. So if you have a discourtesy where somebody mumbles something under their breath after they turn their back and walk to the car, that may be discourtesy, but it doesn't even come close to comparing to the person that yells while jabbing someone in the chest and uses obscenities. It's both the same policy violation, but they should be disciplined.
I know that there are some that are out there that work pretty well, and I think they range within them because you're right. I don't think it would be fair to have the same discipline in those two situations, but if there was a range within the matrix, and again, you're over here, that's the purpose of the matrix, is to kind of help with some consistency. When we have individuals making those decisions, without guidance, then you're going to have a lot of inconsistency. What else you might get? Tapped with one form of discipline for pretty much the same thing that another officer does to a lesser form of discipline. I'm just really looking for people that can have fair expectations and fairly consistent across management.
Yeah, that's valuable.
I had one general company, and I've seen, I've been on the CRB for a number of years now. I've seen a few demotions, particularly in relation to competency, and then promotion fairly soon of that particular individual, pretty much fairly soon thereafter. And we talked a little bit about how our demotions and disciplinary matters handled when somebody applies for promotion, and I just hope that they are really considered and not so much focused on how well they test, because somebody can test really well in academics, does not necessarily translate into an effective supervisor. So this is my plug to say I hope that those are really considered, as part of that process.
This is another thank you for doing this right. When you mentioned that you look for models for discipline throughout the City of Eugene's staff to then suggest applying to the officers, I think that's got to be a morale booster. There are so many vicissitudes to being a police officer that the notion that you get a special form of punishment, the same thing that someone did over there behind the desk in another building, that's got to be a morale killer. So thank you. I was not aware the city was doing this, and again, I think that's a really smart idea.
I'm going to take what you just said. I have a lot of questions about that. And it just immediately is how fair that is when you think about all the city employees that you have and things that they can do that it can be similar to what a police officer is being disciplined for, but the circumstances are so much different because a lot of times a police officer is sent somewhere where it's not a friendly environment, where instead the person was disrespectful in a friendly environment and they just had a bad day, whatever it was. And to say those are similar, I guess that's a little bit where I get concerned when you do that big comparison. I think it could be a good thing in some ways that the police aren't treated any differently than somebody else, but I just want to make sure that the circumstances surrounding those could be quite a bit different.
When the life provides that type of information, it's looking for the information we like to include in that is whether or not the individual was represented by EPA or not, and not information about the circumstances, especially any mitigating circumstances that would potentially impact that in order to help, again, address that fairness. And you're right, there are certain circumstances that an officer faces that are fairly unique. So giving as much information as possible without deterring any sort of confidentiality is our goal, so that our representatives consider the discipline really have good information to work with. We try to get that.
It's almost that there was some way to be able to, I always think about how we can make the public aware of trying to be fair and disciplined. To somehow make them aware that, when we are disciplining officers or the employee of the city, that it's similar discipline for the most part, that we're not being, ourselves just because you're a police officer, you get much stricter, harder, vice versa, never easier one. Would be some way that we can explain it, because most of the time when you talk about these things, where they come out, it's like, we can't talk about this again. But I wonder if we need to talk about the process in those circumstances, instead of just saying, well, we can't talk about what discipline was, but here's how we do our discipline. We can look at similar instances. We look at how they were disciplined in the past, and is that acceptable for this team? That's how they're doing. So it's similar to the way we treat this.
Yeah, I guess it was you that said about trying to make things more equal and fair in the process, following the disciplinary process. I'm aware that I've worked with people, supervisors, a little bit lax in their discipline. I've worked with supervisors who are hard line, code line, you're in trouble. That won't end, most people did. So what I'm saying is, there is no really objective standard. Everything that's done in the process of supervising people is subjective. You may feel that what this person is doing is not within the bounds of what they're supposed to be doing, although the sergeant might think is perfectly fine. So now you have, you might have two shifts that are working under different supervisors and different management techniques. Really, I don't know of any way to guard against that. Maybe by peer involvement or something, but I know that it can be frustrating for people who don't feel they were treated fairly because somebody else wasn't disciplined for the same thing or whatever.
So, you mind if I jump on that, please? So the constant, supervisors aren't determining and administering discipline, so we have a couple of ways of ensuring consistency. One is well, first of all, we're lucky that it's pretty rare that we have to discipline anybody. The performance is pretty exceptional here. And so it's uncommon that an officer makes a mistake, and typically they are mistakes, the performance mistakes, they're not mistakes of the heart. And so, but the check-in happens with HR, so you can't pass go. Every single case that should lead to discipline has that HR check-in. Then they go through the chain of command, so every case has this consistency of being reviewed by almost the same set of supervisors until it gets to me, and I review every single one. So there is so nothing is approved without, except for the traffic crashes, nothing is approved without first going through HR and through me. So the inconsistency that you're concerned with doesn't occur here, or shouldn't occur here.
So I think being held to the same standards happens the same way, because if there's a complaint about the performance or whatever, I mean, it's still coming in through the IA process and being vetted by the auditor and even our IA team to say,
you know, are we applying this fairly versus, you know, or is this person getting paid? You know, if everybody else is doing A and only this person is being held accountable, we need to do something different to make sure that everybody's being held accountable for the same behavior.
Anybody have any? Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Do you want to skip over and come back? I will have to. If there's anybody else. That's okay. Emily has to show up again, so we're going to move it ahead a little bit, and she did show up. We'll bring her back into the agenda. So we can get Williams up to start the introduction to the code of conduct. Remember, this is an introduction. We can ask a few questions of Sergeant Williams, and we'll have a full discussion about this at the next month. This is just kind of get us started.
So this is still a significant state of flux right now. So this is I would say, middle early draft of where we're at with it. I'm going to talk mostly just from where we came from with this, and then next, maybe in April, hopefully it's April, when we actually sit down to this and go through it, we'll all have a chunk of different input as well. So I'm in the process. I've gone over this with the union president. It's kind of a first look with their input. So we've got a whole slew of changes that are needed to be made that just aren't quite finalized enough to really talk about it yet. But the bulk of this is pretty much where it's at. It's a complicated process where the original code of conduct probably isn't specific enough generally. And so what we wind up seeing is that the same few items are the ones that are quoted for most everything as catch-alls. And so this was actually started before I came into the office, and then we did a significant round of modification of what was the draft that was here before, with a lot of the goal being making it more specific for the things that are useful and necessary. At the same time, it's difficult because it can't be so specific that you don't have any outs, basically. So there's some areas that are intentionally and may seem strangely broad, and there's some areas that are really actually pretty specific. And so it's just kind of trying to find that balance. And that's one thing that Michael Clues and I kind of went around with is that specific and broad. So this is kind of where we're at this point. The Code of Ethics has been taken out, and the purpose and scope, philosophy and values, and the discipline policy sections were probably more expansive. I really felt that the Code of Ethics is an important kind of foundation to this policy, and so I put that back in and then weeding out some of the other stuff that this wasn't quite as necessary. It's kind of a mouthful. So that's kind of how we came down to having, or it's a little bit unusual in the way that it's formatted with the Code of Ethics down below the policy a little bit. But it's just, it's a sort of classic, and it still says the right thing, and it's been the same Code of Ethics since maybe, I don't know, a very, very long time. So then that puts us into essentially where we go to a little bit of a different format, where it's written more in a list of what thou shalt not do. Instead of using guiding principles of what you should do, it's written more in the other wording in the way of what you shouldn't do or what's not accepted. Outside of the professional standards section. This section was specifically put together, or was pulled out of the other one as the catch-all. Each four of these are pretty broad, vague, overarching things that we realized that in order to make a a policy that covered everything, there'd probably be a few of these combined, and we can't have that. So, in order to find that balance, these four are kind of the nuts and bolts of what the expectation is. And if there isn't a section buried down in there that actually covers the specifics of those, we decided to cover those schedule things that may or may not come up. So when we launch into conduct that may result in discipline. And this is where we pretty much begin the process of listing out all the things that can get you in trouble. We have abuse of position and authority, adherence to laws and department policy, associations with felons and indicted persons, attendance rights, gratuity, and payment. Just another. It's interesting if you go through this, how many different areas can kind of overlap others and potentially be applied. So attendance, leaving an assigned scene checker assignment without reasonable excuse and proper permission and approval. Where a number of pages later we cover that in another section that we've actually been thinking about moving that to insubordination to be covered under insubordination, having that debate. So again, this is still a multiple work in progress, and I would look forward to hearing from anybody's suggestion based on what we have here between now and the next meeting. So feel free to send those to us. I'm not sure how much everybody has looked it over versus how much we want to read through them. I will probably just read the titles, and then if anybody has any real urgent particular comments on one section or the other, then I'm welcome to have some discussion about it also. That keeps us into courtesy. We had just some discussion about failure to be tactful, and that being broad, and yet at the same time, we looked at all the definitions, and all the definitions really covered everything that we want people to be. And so those were some of the kinds of discussions where you get to talking about specific words and meaning of words and the intent of that. And most of it, fortunately, most of the discussions between Michael Cruz and I were more semantics and stuff than any. But we're on the same page. Everybody wants their officers to have a clear guide of what they can and can't do, and then know what's going to happen. So conduct is a pretty broad one with a lot of, I think it's probably the largest section. There's a little bit of a catch-all for the things that didn't have really enough items to create their own section. Confidentiality of information. Conflict of interest. Duty to know and enforce laws, duty to identify as a police officer. Unsatisfactory performance. This is one that had, where one of those word definitions came up and we had a lot of discussion, and that was the shirking from danger. And everybody knows what it means. But it just feels like kind of funny language to have in a policy. And yet we looked at all kinds of different words that you could use for it, and none of them really encompass what it is we were trying to get to. And that's just making sure that, it's one that's going to be very, very difficult and probably isn't ever going to be cited because it's hard to prove. But part of the policy, in my mind, is the message that it sends to the public, the message that it sends to our new hires, and the standard that if people do pull it up and look at it, what that standard means. And it's your responsibility that you do your job. I mean, it's basically what it comes down to, even when it's a mucky, dangerous, your job. So this is this is specifically a new addition to the policy from the last one. And so it's a process of conversation. Endorsement of products and services, illness or injury and sick leave. and then insubordination. And so that's another one that's brought a handful of discussion, and I think we probably will move neglect of duty E on the next page, leaving an assigned post or assignment without authorization from a supervisor into a proper release. That'll probably get moved over to insubordination. So that's again another one of those where we're just still flexing it around. And then we're looking at trying to balance places where the rules are designated in other places, but they need to be covered in here as well, so that it is somewhat all-encompassing. Illness or injury and sick leave is a good example of that. Using sick leave in violation of city of Eugene APM policy 11.2 or applicable bargaining unit contract. Because while the APM does provide the base rule, the bargaining contracts really do have specifics for each unit, and they can be a little bit different for each. Alcohol is another one where the APM and the different bargaining units have different ways of determining what is acceptable. And so that's another one where we have to be a little bit careful at not defining it too clearly in here and really referring people to other places. Neglect of duty, sleeping while on duty. That's one that has brought up some interesting concerns. Policy is always saying you can't sleep on duty. Here's work graveyard. Graveyard is awful. It's very difficult. I do not sleep very well during the day. I've had a lot of miserable nights working nights. It's one of the reasons I promoted when I did. I felt that there were a lot of promotions coming, and I knew I would limit my exposure to working graveyard. And that's honestly, that was a consideration for when I had my taxpayers. Thank you. Yeah. So, in this policy, it just says you can't sleep while on duty. Well, the reality is that if you're that sleepy, you need to talk to your sergeant, and then you and your sergeant can just determine what the safest course of action is. And it is considered reasonable by many sergeants that if you have somebody that's super sleepy, but it's busy enough that you can't let them go because it's minimum staffing, that a sergeant would allow somebody to take a 15-minute nap on their lunch break. It's amazing what a 20-minute nap will do for your alertness for the following 3 to 4 hours study that I heard. So while we have this as hard and fast, this is one where we have added language ready to be popped in that says you'll see your sergeant. And at some point I've got a proposal for the chief on a restorative rest policy, similar to what Nevada has put into place just recently, or just in agency in Nevada. And so that's one that's it's just a difficult topic because nobody wants employees sleeping on duty unless you're a firefighter. But at the same time, there's a balance between safety and reasonableness. And then another part of the neglected duty is engaging in personal business or any other activity that makes you neglectful or inattentive to your duties. Well, when that line was written in the old policy, we didn't have cell phones with little mini computers where you get an email and who's not going to look at it for 10 seconds and then dismiss it, or a text message or whatever. So is it detrimental that people have those? No. Are we seeing appreciable loss in anything? No. Is it realistic to be able to enforce that? No. So that's one where we need to have some more discussion about how to make it so that the policy can be realistic and can be followed while still maintaining what we need to maintain, which is people working. Political activity. Wasn't anything real stand out in that section for us. There are a couple of changes. Probably add a section that says without the authorization of the chief or deputy, so that if there is something that he approves of that it allows for that. On occasion, something will come up that's semi-politically related or whatever that we want to participate in, and we should have that flexibility without being in violation of our own policy. Property and resources of the department, pretty simple. You can't take, you can't loan stuff. Report submission. The big key to that one is letter A. There is submit reports according to the report system manual. So that's kind of the catch-all that just refers you to that, because that's an extensive document that has all kinds of instruction in it. And then the rest of that's mostly about, well, there is no photographs and that's submitting false, inaccurate, or unnecessary incomplete reports. And that's different than dishonesty or the truthfulness component or section, where somebody could be doing it inadvertently, where you're inaccurate or erroneous, which is generally going to be a performance issue until it's not. And if it's just because you're not able to get them done properly, then we want to deem you for the report section, not for truthfulness. If we find out that it's a truthfulness thing, well, then that's going to take us over to another section of course. But it's a distinction that's important to make. Honestly, I don't know how we've gone through round and round of this and realized that A and B are virtually the same thing, so those are scratched. And actually, A, B, and C are all covered in other areas. Well, A and B are basically the same thing, and essentially covered in other areas, and then C is essentially covered under the initial truthfulness. So this whole section is actually just getting cut out. And the expectations of supervisors. While most of these things that are covered under the supervisor section would be, you could lump them into other sections of the code of conduct. It's important that we send a message to our supervisors about what specifically is for them, or what they're really accountable for. C is an interesting one where failure of a supervisor to ensure a safe and respectful work environment is probably not necessary, because it is a duplicate to conduct, letter I, Title 157I, failure to foster a safe and respectful work environment. And yet, failing to foster the work environment is different in my mind than failing to intervene against someone who isn't fostering a respectful work environment. And so we did put that in there knowing that they're essentially duplicates for the supervisor. But again, it's about the message, and that when the supervisor gets deemed it on an IA for that, but they know that it wasn't because they were being disrespectful, but they didn't uphold the standard that we have for supervisors to intervene with that. So, a lot of moving pieces. There's been many conversations, and many reviews to get it to here, and probably a number of reviews to get it to where we really wanted in the end. But,
So, again, remember this was just an information piece, so we do have our other speakers that show up, but if you have a quick question, I will, as long as it's... Okay, because we will, in April, have a full discussion about this policy, or we'll sit down and go through it all, and be able to address each section and go through that one. So this was mainly just to kind of get his thinking and the department's thinking behind the policy, so that we can then take that as we review this at the next meeting.
And I may have some of the specifics fixed, but I need to do it again. We've got quite a few changes throughout that are pending, but again, filling scribble notes in the margins and in between lines.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
So now we'll move to the employee health and wellness. Emily, Colleen, is it join us?
I apologize, I'm not calling because I wasn't sure if it was a next come right in the office.
Would you mind doing a brief introduction of yourself, Emily, your job, and how long you did?
I'm calling. I've been with PD for just 13 years last month. I work over at the 911 center, so my day shift job, or I should say nighttime because I'm on regular right now, is the communication supervisor. So that's what I do. My passion, though, is with peer support. With our team, I recently took the provision of just over a year ago, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what our team, the purpose of our team, what our team does, and then I'm going to talk to you about the employee development piece. About 10 to 15 years ago, there was a big push in law enforcement, particularly in Oregon, and there was a recognition of the idea of peer support as really good law enforcement can do in order to help their employees. During that time period, somewhere in there, Eugene developed what we now consider CERT. We call our team the Critical Incident Response Team, and the official CERT, so that's now cool. But essentially, the peer support team is the purpose of it. During that time frame, there was a lot of training in the state for critical incident stress debrief, for one-on-one peer support, counseling, that type of stuff. Our team was trained in that, created a policy, put a team in place, just to have a team supervisor and such. But our team was really reactive, and for years after that, that was basically the one in place. Something really bad happened, a large incident, may have been work-related or personal-related, and then the team was activated and called out, and essentially told to kind of provide people and follow up with the support. What we've learned is in 2011, we lost two department members on staff. One line of duty death and one off duty. And what we learned during that time is that one, we didn't have resources within our own team to handle something like that, and we also didn't do enough preventative employee wellness work on the front end, so that we didn't know about it, but that after was enough to basically help our employees reasonably healthy without back from that. So after that time period, our team actually became somewhat inactive in the department. We assisted. We met from time to time, we didn't do much. And so, right now, fast forward a few years, I took leadership of the team last year, where we were almost completely inactive within the department. And so now our main goal is to become more proactive. So, where does that leave us today? So after taking over the team, we've added some more members. Our team is still under what it should be for a department of our size. If we were to do research to say how many peer support members would you need to regularly take care of a department of our size, it's about twice what we are at now, especially on the sworn side. So we're looking, like other parts of the department, understaffed. But that's essentially the recommendation. So some of the goals that we're looking toward is visibility. So what we've done is we've put ourselves back out there, made our team known, let the department know what our mission is. So I've spoken to the patrol supervisors. We went to patrol in service. We went to communications, training, and in service, just to let them know what our team do. We've also created new resources. We have bulletin boards throughout the department. We have some online resources, things like that, to make different resources available to the department. Some of our other goals going forward is we need to look at our peer support policy that talks about the 13 and their function, and look at that and make sure that it's up to date. One of our goals is to create a line of duty death manual for the department. We have this Oregon Fallen Badge organization, and they will help with that. That wasn't in place when Officer Focal was killed. It is now. It's a really good organization that will assist in something like that. But it would be nice to for our team to have something to follow because it's wasn't recognized, and also building kind of involving. Some of the other things that we're working towards are bringing more training to our department. One of the pieces that our team has never been able to do is to create some bridges between families and spouses and our department. So we've created some areas where we've created a lot of support for the actual department members, but we haven't built any bridges with our family. And the feedback we get about our team is often that, you know, my spouse doesn't know anybody else so connected they don't have support, things like that. So we decided to add a family liaison position to our team. This is something that Lake County Sheriff's team does if someone doesn't work for the department but is closely connected with the department, and their role is to essentially provide that peer support to families and other spouses, children, things like that. So we're in the process of defining what we want that position to look like. It's going to be a volunteer position. It will not be an employee of the department. And our team is being really cautious of the selection of that and how we're going to go about that. It's going to be a really important piece. But that's something that we're working towards doing. Also, picking up a piece on suicide prevention. Suicide is a topic that law enforcement is very familiar with and often doesn't want to bring up. They don't really want to talk about it. But it's a huge piece of the environment we live in. So our team is doing a lot of research out there about ways that we can bring that into the department and the awareness of that, and you know, just what that's going to look like for us. There's some other training too this week. I was at the DPSST doing a training called Stress First Aid. This is an idea that was put in place first in Navy and the Marine Corps. It's now being brought into the Fire and Police Service, and it's the idea of the recognition of when an employee or person from a normal stress reaction into what we consider a stress injury. Physical injuries are really easy to identify. Stress injuries are more difficult to identify. They're identified through behaviors and words. And so Oregon is actually one of the first states for this training to actually be brought to role. And so they're rolling that out to as many people as they can. There's several departments, including Salem and OSP, that are mandating it for their entire department. And so John Simpson and I attended that training this week. We now have that information. So at this point, we're just kind of trying to make a game plan for the next couple of years of what does it look like. So when you ask people what does employee wellness look like to you, and what does someone who's whole or well need to, it's not going to look the same for everyone. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And so when you look at departments that have done employee wellness programs and things like that, they generally do a variety of different things, which is what our team is hoping to do. So in addition to just doing a peer support, something bad happens, workforce law, you know, kind of be your shoulder and talk to you, things like that. Now we're trying to say, okay, on the front end, what can we do to make our employees as well as they possibly can be, physically, mentally, and so that when bad things happen, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because bad things are going to happen with law enforcement, how are they going to cope with that and then come back to a place of hope. And so basically, we're putting together kind of a strategic plan for the next couple of years. What's that going to look like? There's going to be a lot of pieces to it. So one is going to be the exposure of our team, the exposure of the chaplain program that we have here at the department. Another is going to be the physical well-being of them. So, you know, whether that means that we go out to the community and find like partnerships and resources to refer people to for physical health or nutrition, things like that. We teach our officers to do a lot of things. We teach our dispatchers to do a lot of things. We teach how to, you know, defend themselves. We teach them how to shoot guns. We teach them how to use the radio. But we don't really do a good job of teaching them how to be well. And that's not something that everybody
everybody naturally knows how to do. And so also our chaplain program, just trying to develop that program with them to make them work closer with her, so that we can kind of have a more unified front. The other thing that we're going to be doing is trying to bring some different trainings, so whether that's stress first aid that we bring to our department, or some speakers on suicide awareness, suicide prevention, resilience, mindfulness. There's a huge push on, again, the military side and on law enforcement, and the idea of resilience training and mindfulness. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. We're also looking to do the family liaison position to try to, build those bridges between the spouses and to have a little bit more support there for the family position. We've put our the sort of presentation back into the Eugene Police Local Police Academy. That for years, that's something that we want to do. They get a piece of emotional survival, and it's a short class that they receive, but there's not any local piece. And so our search is now going into the academies, talking to the officers, talking about our team, talking about what we do, and talking about the way wellness and kind of building those bridges from day one. So that's a piece to go back. We hope that in addition, we're going to be adding a spouse piece to that. So through the academy, we can also have them invite their spouse and other family members, and we can kind of show our team what we'll do in that piece too. Questions so far? So that's kind of So that's kind of, at this point, we are kind of taking in all of the different programs that are out there, gathering the information, making a plan for the next couple of years. The last 6 months has been mostly about exposure, re-exposure to our team and what we're doing. We're also considering, now that we're having peer support under our umbrella, but also employee wellness, it's certainly still the correct term that we want to use. We want to rename the team. We want to rebrand the team to something else. There's been a lot of different talk within the team about what is the appropriate response. It used to kind of always be we weren't called and symptoms were really bad, and then it was really bad, and then the entire team comes in, and then we kind of have to fill out what's the most appropriate response. But what we found out is there's a lot of different things that happen. Some of them professional, some of them personal, that affect employees in different ways. Maybe one employee was affected, maybe 100 employees were affected. And so we're really trying to change our approach into a more tiered approach. So sometimes it might include just a phone call with one individual. Maybe it means showing up to briefing and just talking to the shift, the shift. Maybe it includes a form of stress. Maybe it includes just a note in their mailbox of, hey, we're thinking about you, what do you need to see? So we're trying to kind of lay out the different tiers of how we approach this particular situation, and just really trying to match up employees, to different situations where we can show we have the correct approach. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Dr. Q, I have Terry and Marshall. Go ahead, Terry.
We were speaking earlier about evaluations, supervisors and sergeants doing evaluations. I was wondering if there was anything in that evaluation procedure where you might be tipped off by a supervisor who has observed in this employee perhaps a difference in their stress response, maybe something's escalating. Can you be alerted that way, or is it all self-reporting? Is all the employees that let you know they're experiencing a problem, or can it be built in so that piece is part of?
Good question. We get a variety of different notifications, and part of it is just awareness. So after kind of bringing our team back at an active status and talking to the supervisors,
stuff, we're finding that more and more right-level supervisors are coming to our team and saying, hey, have you noticed a change in so-and-so? This is kind of what I've observed. Can you take a check on it? Or, hey, they went on this call last night. I think it would be good if your team checked on them. So I would say that it's about 50-50. 50% of the time it's someone else, whether it's a peer or a supervisor coming on that employee's behalf and saying, I really think that they could benefit from your team checking on them. And then the other percent of the time is the employee coming on their own behalf to remember and initiating that. And I would say that, you know, it's not always like a formal, I'm coming to you because I know you're on the 13, when our team knows that that's what it is. And so the majority of what we do is one-on-one contact, and most of the time that's every day. That's every day talking to people, knowing our people, knowing what they're going through, knowing what their spouse thinks is, knowing who your kids are, knowing what team they're assigned to, knowing just about them in general. And that's what I encourage my team to do all the time so that, you know, they kind of have those connections. We also try to really match up when we are called upon by someone, hey, I want you to check on so-and-so. I will really think hard about who might assign who's going to be the most appropriate to this. Is it someone who's got a family issue at home and being able to reason more? So I'm good if it's an officer that's already done an officer ball shooting. So
Marshall, Chris, myself.
Just a couple things. We've actually done a lot of research on this in the healthcare setting because we have a physician wellness program trying to figure out how to make it more effective. And two of the things that kind of jumped out from that research to me is that, you know, police officers, like healthcare professionals, have a lot of stresses that are beyond their control. It's just the nature of the work. And one of the things that it seems organizationally that could be done to sort of detoxify the atmosphere was not any particular fix other than to engage with people who are going to be suffering the most stress on ways that they can reduce unnecessary stress. So things about, I mean, there's no way you're going to avoid shift work, but the ways you develop the shift to engage, in this case, with unions, but whoever the line workers are that are suffering that stress. So organizationally engaging with them to say, hey, how could we do this better? I mean, we've done it this way for forever, and you're telling us it's a source of stress. Is there a better way to do it? It's always hard to let go and be like, okay, you know. The second thing we really were trying to do is to reduce the barriers to seeking help, and really that was having a mentality that it's not that you're sick, it's that you could be better. And I think that was the same sort of conscious, for lack of a better term, environment in medicine. That, you know, well, I'm a doctor, I can't be sick. I'm a honey, my wife, how to work sick. Like that, how to get sick. And so what we've done is we have a provider who's not an employee, it's a contract provider. The provider makes no diagnosis. The provider reports nothing back out to usage data. Nobody knows who's using it other than one of our employees checks the eligibility for that kit. There are records that are kept, but they're not third-party billing or anything like that. So the peer model is great, but it can't help prey to sort of macho mentality like, well, I don't want to admit to my friends that I'm not feeling so great about this. So I would hope there'd be something like that because, you know, like doctors, police officers are making life-and-death decisions at this sort of moment. And if they could have access to that,
there is employee assistance. So we do a lot of referrals to our employee assistance program, which is a formalized program through the department. We also have our listed, what we call our vetted counselors and other resources. And because won't talk to anyone, and they're very particular who they talk to, and a lot of people out there don't understand their role and how they think and what they're supposed to, and so we're really careful about who we refer them to definitely make those referrals. We're still building that list. Unfortunately, a lot of our trusted ones have moved out of the area, and we're still building that list and kind of working with other teams to get that list up to where we definitely we definitely have like a trusted resource based on that. And that's kind of like making that decision of, you know, yes, this is something that, you know, this is an employee that needs to monitor and check in. This is an employee that, you know, really kind of needs a little bit of intervention, and then this is an employee that really needs a clinical level of professional, you know, help. And so kind of we constantly try to train our peer members of, you know, at what level is this, you know, where we can handle it, and at what level is it not.
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm okay with I was happy to see that policy came in place with that 72-hour aftercare. I think that's huge. When Lieutenant Samuel drove up, I was kind of surprised that this already that. And if those of you that don't know about it, hope that it seemed to me that focus was for major incidents where officers or commissary folks are going to be dealing with trauma. And, well, now you're just expected to go take another call on the shop. And having the ability for supervisors and peers to go to those people and say, hey, go home. Like, we're fine, you know, why don't you go home? And getting them, you know, at least a break. I was happy to see that. And I think we could probably do more with that, including your team. I was really happy to see you guys in service, because kind of my segue into my last piece, you mentioned partnerships. Marshall mentioned barriers. You know, you can only lead a horse to water. But regardless of people's perceptions, regardless of people's personalities, and who's going to talk, who's not going to talk, and who are they going to trust and not trust, there's going to be such a wide range because we trust so many people that I think that's part of the problem. And something I was thinking about recently is, you know, bringing mental health counselors and therapists, whatever that you work with or contract with, to in-service and say, hey, you know, an introduction at least for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it might be, and an email can go out. Because I think another thing you're going to have more time is you're not going to see probably one cop go up and grab his card, right? But if anyone comes out with that information to the masses, you know, where somebody is to that level. But I think we could do more and should do more on that line. And, you know, it's going to be difficult to get everybody to open up or whatever they might need for mental health. But, I mean, helping one person is enough. It's us putting the effort out to do that is important. But,
yeah, I agree. I think it's just making it available, you know, and exposure, and what Chris is talking about is policy for reducing the traumatic incident policy. And honestly, it's something that was possible for supervisors to always do, which is release someone from their duties temporarily so that they can recover after a traumatic event. That research shows they need 18 to 24 hours after trauma exposure to actually fully recover. Well, we don't get 18 to 24 hours off our leave ever between shifts. And so that constant exposure to wear and tear is usually what, you know, so this is now more just black and white. Everything about it for everyone, about the employees, you know, my level supervisors, they know exactly where that line is and what they can do, what they can't do.
I'm going to myself in the queue and I just want to say, I think the work that you and your group are doing is great. It's so important. I just remember when I went with the Citizens Police Academy, I was an officer, kind of came in and talked about his career and all the stresses that he went through from being accused of things that he didn't do to ultimately being shot. And he just talks about that, you know, I look back and go, I really needed to have help at that point. And that's, you know, when I was shot, or when I was shot at, or when I was accused of doing something. And so having a group like yours that is available to them is so important. You know, when I was at the 911 center, they got a call for a 14-year-old girl that committed suicide in Springfield. And 911 operators, one got the mother and one got the sister calling it at the same time. And then you had to turn right around and put that aside and answer the next call. And then I was talking to the one that took the sister's call, and she had a family member that had committed suicide in her past, and she said that really, and that was the toughest call for me to get through to do that. And she just had to finish her shift, just like you said, had to do all that. So hopefully, you know, there was an opportunity for her to have somebody to help reprieve her. But it is, because those things happen, and it happens to both parents a lot. So I think it's a work demonstration. I just think that we need to do more of it and make it, try to cut down some of those barriers, make it comfortable for people to seek that help themselves. There's hours out there.
So the good news is that the idea of peer support, the idea of stress first aid, all these concepts that we're talking about are really becoming more normalized in our culture. If you talk to, you know, what they call the salty dogs, the people that have been here 30 years or things like that, they look at this and say, wow, I wish this existed in my service. You know, I wish I had this throughout my career so that I, you know, could be, you know, maybe in a better place than I am now and things like that. And so it is becoming more normalized. I think the more you talk about it, the more you expose people to it, the more open they're going to be to it. Employee wellness is unfortunately something that's extremely hard to measure. Generally, people see it through retention, through morale, through lower sick leave, lower complaints, lower divorce rates, things like that. So it's not as measurable as some things that the benefit of it. So, you know, for our department to say it's a priority, it's important because we're going to put people into it, we're going to put money into it, you know, makes me happy because it's so important. But it is something that you can't measure everything as other things. So it's a long term, and you know, for the long term, and have down the road
So I appreciate all the comments been made. I would just add that I really think that you've blended your position and passion shines through, and I think that it's really neat. I think it bodes well for the program. Okay.
Anybody have anything else? Emily, thank you. Sorry we left you outside in the hall.
Just know you're always welcome.
Yeah. Good. We'll move on to the chief report.
You can read through the activities that I've got. I think all of those are self-explanatory. And you've probably read most of those news stories. You can see the policies that we've updated. Kyle's got this through. Last page is a message that I sent to 4J school district. We also have that, one very similar to it, on our web page and on our Facebook page. And it's gotten a variety of reactions, you can imagine. What I'd like Carter to do is bring up the presentation that we gave to council the other day. So, yeah, am I away from him? All right, thank you. This is the presentation that we made at council yesterday. Some of you might have seen it. What I really want to get to, what I really want to get to is the statistics that we've got. In order to prepare for this spring and summer, we've gathered quite a bit of information from a number of different stakeholders, and so we've discussed that a little bit with council. What I'm going to go over right now is the metric that we're going to use to measure the conditions downtown and parks and in certain neighborhoods. And so the metric we decided to use are all the community-generated calls for service. So we're not We're not going to report, at least for this purpose, we're not going to report on crimes in that particular area only, because a lot of what's creating a problem downtown, for example, in parks and in neighborhoods, isn't criminal, but it is antisocial behavior that's pretty upsetting to people. So when someone calls us because they feel the police department needs to help them with somebody, that ranges from someone who makes vulgar and offensive remarks to women as they walk by, or someone who is just acting in a way that's startling and upsetting, and it may not be criminal in nature by the time a police officer shows up, but it is degrading the sense of safety in that neighborhood. And sometimes they are, it ranges from that to someone who's defecating or urinating in public, or drinking in public, or fighting, or serious assaults, or burglary, or car break-in. So it's the whole, this includes every call that comes in from the public or from someone in the department, not with the police department. So what you see here is a graph. On the right is one of the areas that the council wanted to report on. This is not the downtown neighborhood. This is our downtown operational area. So it's 5th Avenue on the north, 15th Avenue on the south, High Street on the east, and Lincoln on the west. And what you see in this trend, what you see here is that over the last 3 years, which is the same reporting period you'll see in all these slides, over the last 3 years, the calls for service in the downtown has gone up 46%. And these are measured per day, so you can see it was somewhere between 15 and 20 per day 3 years ago, and today it's at about 25 per day in the downtown area. So the demand on our service has gone up. Okay? And then, so then in the West University neighborhood, this is campus on the east, Willamette Street on the west, Broadway or Franklin Boulevard on the north, and then 19th Avenue on the south. There's a little less than 5,000 people that live in this neighborhood, and the calls for service have gone up 34% in the last 3 years. The third neighborhood here that we discussed is Whitaker, and this includes all of this park area here that starts at the edge of Skinnersby Park, all the way through here along the river to the west edge of Mark Jacobs Park. So it's the river on the north, and then maybe I want to say 7th Avenue on the south, and then all the way to Chambers on the west. Okay, and then activity in the Whitaker neighborhood, calls for service have gone up 67%. So this neighborhood is concerned. They made it pretty clear to me that they believe that as we put pressure on behavior downtown, that it moves into their neighborhood. That may be true, and you can't conclude that from this data. This data seems to support what they've been saying. It's also true that we've seen activity related to people who are chronically homeless, quality of life type of crimes have gone up all over town. So there's definitely an increase in that. Whether it's gone up in one place because of our pressure in another place is probably true, but we can't really prove that necessarily. Okay, and then we're also going to monitor select parks. So this is calls for service per day in the parks that are along the river, Amazon Park in South Eugene, Monroe Park, Scobert Park, and then this is Washington Jefferson Park here. This is a pretty small number of calls, and I think that's because if you see a Tesla Park 5 days in a row, you're probably not going to call every day that you see it. But 3 years ago, we got fewer than 5 calls for service a day, and now it's a little bit more than 6 calls for service a day. Not a huge number, but there is an increase, similar to the others. Okay, this slide shows, this is a heat map of public-initiated calls for service. And you can see most of our work, or the highest concentration of our work, is right here. This blob right here, this is where we're sitting right now. A lot of people walk into the front counter and they'll report a crime here, so that's why that appears here. There is not a crime spree here. This is University, this is campus, 13th and Kincaid on the east, and then over here is 7th and Chambers. And then the map next to it is officer-initiated activity, and you see it's pretty much in the same area. One exception is that there's this beach spot at Four Corners, and I think that's probably traffic enforcement, and there's a lot of quality of life offenses that occurred there. So Chris could probably verify for us if that's the explanation.
Alcohol, fuel stuff at that intersection.
Yeah, there's a bar here, and there's a market there, and all that. And then, okay, this is probably the weakest data that we have in this presentation, but it is worth commenting on. Last year, citywide, the calls that we dispatched animal welfare officers to went down 7% over the previous year. So we dispatched 7% fewer calls for service to animal welfare officers last year than the year before. And their self-initiated activity was 11% lower. A couple of possibilities there. One is that one of our animal welfare officers retired, and we hired a new one, so in that transition, naturally, they're going to be less available as they're learning their job for calls. And they're also engaged in less self-initiated activity because they're new. That's one explanation. The other is that there were several significant investigations that our AWOs conducted last year that took them away from their availability to be dispatched to do that. The bars on the right do help a little bit, though. We asked our AWOs to spend more time downtown, and so they had a few more. The previous year they had 45 contacts. This last year it was 72 contacts. So they did do a little more work downtown. And I'm sure it was helpful, and the conditions would have been a lot worse if they hadn't done that, but it was a pretty rough year downtown for the presence of dogs that were not well behaved. The problem with dogs in the downtown core is that when there's a high concentration of pedestrian traffic and a lot of dogs with people who are loitering down there, it's just a bad combination, and it feels unsafe. So that's why this is relevant, and we proposed a couple of changes that included managing the presence of dogs. So what this graph shows is that downtown, in this period, this 3-year period, January 1st through December 31st, 14 through 16, there were 22,523 calls for service downtown. That represents 8.6% of all the calls for service in Eugene. Okay? Only 1.1% of our population live downtown, and it constitutes 4.2% of the total area of Eugene. So 8.6% of our demand for our work occurred in 4.2% of the area. Okay? Next line is the same. West University was 9.5% of our total calls for service, for 4.5% of the population, 4.7% of the area. 9.5% of the calls and 4.7% of the area. Whitaker, 8.7. You can see the figures here. So almost 27% of our calls for service occurred in 21% of our city's area. It's not a dramatic disparity, but it is interesting. Okay, so these are slides that we're going to start working from. This will be our first version of our data-led policing as we're slowly working back into our data-led policing efforts. We'll include this pattern of slides along with other crime statistics and traffic crash data. So the first presentation is March 21st to the senior staff team, and more detailed versions of that will occur for patrol command and then for patrol teams. I'll bring the senior staff version here every month. After that, the first one on the 21st will receive once a month. And that's what I've got.
Any questions?
I saw this Wednesday, and I did a lot of time to think about it, so I tried to figure out how do we best interpret all this information. And because, statistics kind of lead you where you want to be able to go if you believe in something. I'm believing what I'm saying here. So, my point being is, we're, instead of a cluster bomb, we need a laser-focused, laser-guided missile, not a cluster bomb on the site. So everything has to be interpreted. And it's not just cause for sickness, and it's not just the crime, and it's not just what occurs down there, but it's all three. And so what I'm thinking is, people in the downtown area, a lot of people are inured to this kind of behavior. Now, they stop calling. I talk to merchants who say, I'll call them before. What are they going to do? They're here, they're causing trouble, but nobody's going to do anything, so they kind of give up. Whereas in the residential neighborhood, if someone shows up and they look nefarious and doing something, neighbors are calling. Everybody's calling. Hey, so we might get multiple calls on one incident in whatever neighborhood, where we might never get a call on multiple incidents in downtown. So I don't think we can just rely on that. What I'm asking is that, that we look at, and this is difficult because you don't have the staff for this, I'm sure, is look at the combination of all of these things together. Self-reporting opinions from people at these hearings that come in and speak about it, and get that information enough to realize that we really are seeing trouble. And that's where we need to focus. That's all I have to say.
No, that's a really good point. And that might explain why the change in over 3 years hasn't been as dramatic downtown as it is in Whitaker. It might explain some of that. So what the University of Oregon has offered to help us to create a volunteer team, a VIP team, that would count behaviors for us. So they would make objective, neutral observations of certain areas, count behaviors so that we can extrapolate from that what the real activity is downtown and in Whitaker and parts and so on. So we'll start small to see how it works and go from there. It'll take time to develop all that. And then we'll know that when we dial in something to influence the behavior, we'll know what the effect is. Thank you.
I put myself in the queue and the temporary. The only thing I want to say, I just want to say, I really appreciate you putting out the thing about immigration laws. Facebook, I shared it with the library when I got so much.
I think Bob has a really good point about people stop calling when they don't get a result within the time they expected, or they don't get the result that they expect. Looking at so many animal calls, I know that I have stopped calling about the dog in our neighborhood that's out of traffic several times a week because I just kept getting told we don't have anyone to send out. Like, okay, well, I won't waste your time calling you up. But that means in the stats, there's nothing here that's a problem. Now, there's no things from that I can see. There we are. I'm doing a lot of work for the mayor right now that involves public comment. The sanctuary city, I was able to reach 30,000 people in about 5 days with the opportunity to comment. On this downtown business, it's just starting to unfold in terms of public comment, but I'm actually a little surprised for Eugene that I'm not seeing more people saying, how dare you infringe on the rights of. I'm seeing a whole lot more. I'd like to be able to go downtown and not get bitten by a dog or hit in the head with a bike lock. I kind of wonder if for some people there's a bit of a tipping point that they haven't reached. And honestly, I think it's good because unfortunately it's at the point, but I think it's good that more people are ready to do something. And what I'm hearing a lot is, yes, better enforcement downtown is important, but it has to be accompanied by increased services, it has to be accompanied by programming in the streets, and something else going on there that brings the crowd down. And of course that immediately gets a pushback from the service providers saying, we have services that a lot of these people downtown on the streets could be using, but don't. So that begs the question of, do we actually need more services? Don't know the answer to that. But I am a little surprised at the number of people I'm seeing who are on board for, let's do something before we drive out the businesses that have come in there in the last couple of years. I moved to Eugene, downtown was kind of a wasteland. big holes everywhere, and went down there. And I looked at the photos from that period of time that I have to use in publicity about neighborhoods. And it's like there's no car for a block. There's one person on the sidewalk, just looking at 5, 6, 7 years ago. So there's a renaissance in downtown Eugene, and we really don't want to ruin it. I think I'm seeing more of the public on board with that than there might have been when there wasn't much there in their minds to say. That's my
Marshall.
Counselor Syretis is here, so I can ask this question. But to me, it looks like a limited number of people are causing a disproportionate share of the problem. And the problem we're having, you know, in the human rights community certainly is that then those behaviors are being attributed to a larger group of people that don't engage in those behaviors. And we're having trouble identifying and the really problematic and criminal behaviors and identifying who's doing them and addressing that in the criminal sense. And sometimes part of a larger picture, but that's what we're doing here. Has there been any discussion about CCTV cameras for limited areas? I'm talking about the ones that the data-driven by calls for service, not, you know, wide drag, not that they have lunch or anything, but, you know, park blocks, Broadway Plaza, clearly the parks along the river that have density and wouldn't merit it, but I personally don't have a problem with that implicating any privacy concerns. Is there some impediment that you're seeing, or is it a will issue?
Well, the police commission developed a pilot policy to implement a CCTV system, and there's certain areas where the data indicated that it would be helpful. And so we took that, we didn't take the policy, but we took the proposal to council the last time we appeared on downtown, which was a couple of months ago, and they rejected the CCTV.
Well, we have our answer. Thanks.
I didn't even hear that. I've never heard it. That was coming up.
Yeah. I would assume we just did that. So, they didn't like the idea.
Oh, consensus.
They just bring it back. There were 3 proposals, 2 of which were affirmatively moved to be brought back, and 1 was omitted from the motion.
So the 2 to bring back were smoking and the dog ban, and then also redesigning certain parts of the park blocks and so on. So we're going to, next Wednesday, there will be a presentation at council on redesign of open space that would improve safety and appeal.
I have a couple questions that I can't remember their names. Are you using any of their calls for service in the data that you're collecting as well? Because more people are calling them, or we're not capturing that data.
Yeah, they work for the Chamber of Commerce, essentially. And well, this is the easiest data to get our hands on. That are gross enough numbers that they're going to tell us what the trend is.
And then I read that downtown's going to have more patrols or more officer presence like they had in the summer. Is that coming from other areas, or is that overtime, or how's that being implemented?
Yeah, so 2 things. One is that we have changed the hours of the downtown team so that instead of working Monday through Saturday, some during the day and some at night around bars, they're all working between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. I think that's the range of their hours, Sunday through Saturday. So we have them out there 7 days a week during basically daytime hours. And then we've supplemented the bar scene with regular patrol officers from the shifts. That will create a better ability to respond to calls for service, but it's not going to be the kind of presence that would make a difference in people's behavior when it's free. And then the city council appropriated $500,000 to improve safety downtown in parks and in their neighborhoods for this fiscal year that ends in June. And 200,000 of that is going to the police department to staff up in those areas, which we do in the summer months normally anyway. That won't be enough money to make a huge difference, but we're going to maximize it and see what we can do. And so those will be, some of them will be on-duty officers to help boost that, but we'll offer a lot of overtime.
We are running out of time, and so we'll go quickly. If anybody has any closing comments they would like to say to the group.
I would like to thank the commissioners who showed up this evening and allowed us to do some business. Your presence is much appreciated. Do it again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
That's fine.
That's okay. It's a great irony. I don't even have to have cameras that are plugged in.
Yeah.
This is the volume.